Yo guys, how's it going? My name's Umzzy and welcome back to another episode of How to Carry. This time round we're looking at the support role. This is going to be the last role type of carrying video. However, I do intend to make a lot of videos on the specific champions that you want to use and how you want to carry with specific champions. Now, obviously, these are going to be different depending on which patch you're playing on. So, for example, if I did a how to several guide like 2 patches beforehand, it'd be completely different to the 2 patches now. So, starting off with how to support, there's going to be a lot of similarities that each lane role has with this. So, for example, priority, lane priority, lane management, all of that. Obviously, one of the biggest things that I see supports doing wrong is taking farm. Taking farm from your ADC is literally the one thing you're not meant to do. Other than that, as you guys can see here, it's always good to have vision. So those 2 wards have been planted on that side. It's very helpful for my team. Second of all, you always want to be poking. One thing that is very good about supports, even if you don't land it, it's always just good to throw your poke out. For example, Muriel, her Q is her poke, and you'll see me in this game, in the future, throwing quite a lot of Qs. And one of them even ends up getting me a kill. For example here, I think this was maybe some damage. I'm not sure if it was a kill or damage, but yeah. So trying to throw your pokes is one thing that I can advise as a support that you should always be doing, because first of all, this weakens the enemy. Second of all, it provides you with extra coverage that lets them back compared to you attacking them. Examples of pokes could be, for example, Muriel's Q, like I've said. It could be Steel's Q or stun and then running away quickly. Steel's a bit harder considering his melee. Narbash could be his thunk. And yeah, that's one thing that you should always be doing. Now, one thing that I'm trying to tell this person here is because the enemy is quite behind, we should be freezing our wave. However, he decides he's just going to force the wave and I just get kind of annoyed about it. Now, another thing that you can do as a support is help your other lanes. Now, people don't realize that despite the fact that, yes, you're supporting your ADC, but late game, you also support your main, everyone. You just support everyone. Your job is to keep everyone alive, not just your ADC. Yes, ADC is prioritized, but sometimes other lanes are also, more of a priority. For example, as a support, ganking mid lane every now and then should be something that you always try to look towards, because this could help your mid laner either secure a kill or secure his lane farm easier and cause the enemy mid laner to be behind on farm, which could help your team significantly. This would not affect your own lane, because what happens is that your ADC just carries on going. Now, as I said here, you always want to be poking, and another thing that you wanted to see is because we're parallel formation, which I've explained in the other videos, parallel formations when you're standing right next to each other, this allowed both of us to hit the enemy at the exact same time doing double damage, whereas if I was standing behind or if I was standing in front of my Murdoch, the damage would be much, much lower and maybe we wouldn't have even gotten that kill. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is Raptors. Now, Raptors is one of the most important things for your lane because it is what makes your ADC scale significantly. Raptors has been changed to where it's now at 8 minutes at spawn, so it's pretty annoying because it means that it does force fights pretty early. So if you're not ahead early, it's going to be very, very hard, and it could also be the reason why you end up falling behind if you end up playing it pretty wrong. Now, another thing that I want to talk about support wise is ward placement. Now, ward placement also, yeah, this was the point where I was talking about where you want to always be poking. Unfortunately, my Murdoch ended up getting greedy and he ended up doing that. However, I ended up trying to get the poke on him, which actually ended up getting the kill. So that was pretty huge. Now, going back to ward placement is essential as a support. It's one of your main tasks of whatever you're meant to be doing. And this is because your job is to keep your ADC alive, right? So if an enemy is ganking your lane, you need to know this. It's not the ADC, it is good if they have a ward and they help you out, but it's not their, it's your job compared to theirs. Now, what you end up seeing is this is one good ward where the current ward is being placed, where the current ward is already placed, sorry. A second good ward is a ward around here, because that ward allows for a deep jungle gank. So this prevents them from coming from their jungle, this prevents them from coming from above Raptor wall, and also we have a secondary ward just in case. Now, what you end up seeing here is me ganking mid lane. Sure, I don't actually end up getting any kills, or I barely do any damage, but this caused the wave to be unfrozen, and it actually ended up pushing the wave towards my mid laner, as you guys will end up seeing later. Furthermore, I think Gideon even ended up backing, which stopped him from getting more farm, so it's always good to help your lane gank. Secondly, if you do gank, you can always end up doing stuff like this, where you actually end up... I think I missed these shots because they ended up hitting the wall for some reason, but... For example here, you could have ended up ganking your own lane, which could be very significant as well if the enemy team doesn't have good ward placement, which I know this team didn't, because we've killed them so much already. And now, as you guys can see in mid lane, the wave that I did kind of set by helping hit the Gideon has pushed towards my Countess. Now my Countess can just freeze it there and just completely farm freely. It's perfect farm for her. Another thing that I want to go over as a support is that you guys always want to be one step close. If you've frozen the wave, you don't want to be under tower as a support. The ADC, yeah, sure. But as you guys can see here, I am pushed more towards the enemy tower because I'm keeping him from, not only because he's already missing out on gold, but now by me pushing forward, he's missing out on XP too. So he's not going to level up as well as get money. So he's literally just going to be basically AFK. Like, he's not going to make a difference to the team. Now, looking at the clock, I realized that it's also 8 minutes is coming close, so I want to somewhat push this Twin Blast, get a bit more damage on him pre-Raptor fight. So I end up trying to do as much damage as possible. I don't know what he ends up doing. His dodging was a bit weird, but it worked out. And he does end up trying to push me, I believe. But yeah, so overall, I've gone over here. You want to go over some wave priority. So wave priority, this is why I end up pushing this wave as hard as possible, and I don't let the guy like freeze it. This is because this way, now that the lane has pushed up, we get a pretty easy rotation to Raptors. As you guys can see, I did end up trying to do a bit more damage to the guy just so he has a weaker chance of getting to the Raptor fight. And even if he does show up, he shows up with lower HP, which is always a good thing. Now, one other good thing for us is that it ended up being a point where we didn't actually have a contest for this Raptors, so it was really good for us. But yeah, so overall, things I've gone over have been ward placement, which is very important as a support. Sorry. Another thing that I've gone over is poking in lane. Another thing that I've gone over is your lane priority, your lane management, and how when you want to freeze, when you want to force. Hopefully, that's more of the job of the ADC, because you're not meant to actually touch the waves. But as you guys can see here, I realized that the wave has way too much shooter minions, and we want to push our wave in, so we end up going for a full force. Now, as a support, when your teammate wants to force his lane, you always want to use all your abilities if necessary to get rid of the minions, because that way it gets rid of the minions as fast as possible if you're also using your abilities. Therefore, freezing or forcing your wave as quick as possible, which is always the best thing to do when you're trying to force your wave. It also known as crashing your wave into tower. Now, another thing that I want to go over as an ADC is that you should always have good map awareness. Another way to have good map awareness is by, first of all, obviously looking at the map. Second of all, having deep wards, which is what I wanted to put down here, but it turns out that I actually didn't have a ward available, so I didn't end up putting one. I didn't realize I ended up getting a G ward, an emblem right here, so I could have put one here, but having a deep ward is always helpful for seeing future ganks. Furthermore, another thing that I do want to talk about is the fact that you should always look at the top of your screen. So as you guys can see, the pictures of our teammates over here, underneath them is their health bars and their mana bars. I'm always looking at this to make sure that my teammates are not dying. For example, right here, the Countess, she's somewhat low, and I realize that her HP goes down to red, and I instantly turn around and I ult her. The thing is, this ult wasn't actually needed. However, it could have saved her in a situation where she was getting ganked because she doesn't have wards, in a situation where she took an extra tower shot. Just some situations it does end up working out, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. So if I didn't ult and she died, it would have been worse than me ulting as I did and me not getting any benefit from it, to be honest. Instead, she just ended up backing. Furthermore, what I ended up technically doing was pushing her wave up again and resetting and crashing her wave, which would have eventually led to her wave coming back to her side. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is always keeping an eye on your jungler. So, for example, if your jungler, normally every jungler starts off red side, whatever your jungler is doing, there is a small chance that the enemy jungler is doing the same thing. For example, what I normally do is I go red buff into enemy gank mid lane. However, sometimes I end up seeing the enemy jungler do the exact same to my mid lane. And then from there, I go take the enemy blue and the enemy takes my blue. It's somewhat very symmetrical, if you think about it. So as a support, if you keep your eye out for wherever the our jungler is. So for example, right now, I can see that our jungler is on the right-hand side. There's a small chance that the enemy jungler would be on the left-hand side. Or left-hand side being like their left-hand side, which is their red side. So I'm always keeping an eye out for that. So if my jungler is on our left side, I'm not going to be as like cautious of warding. However, I know that he is not on the same side as us, so I want to always be warding. Now, another thing that I want to talk about as a support main is that you should always put your teammate first. Honestly, it does not matter. It does not matter if you end up dying if it means you save your ADC from dying. This is because your ADC, if he doesn't die, sure, there's no actual buffs like specifically if you get killed there's a bounty of like, for example, a specific person. However, it does mean that your teammate gets way more farm than you do, and that is the only thing you want, because as you guys can see, I barely have any farm, and that farm is from me going mid lane and like helping out the guy. Now, same thing here. I noticed that my mid laners are fighting right now, so I always want to keep my eyes aware if they do need an ult, which I have in around 5 seconds. Furthermore, what I realize is that because of my ADC, because of me ganking mid and ulting other lanes so much, it made the level difference between me my ADC and the enemy ADC quite large. This is pretty significant because it ended up leading to my ADC also having another advantage in the lane. Now, once again, at this exact same position, I realized that the Quang has pretty low HP. This time around, I don't see the need to ult him because I see that he's also under tower. So I don't instant ult him, but I do always have my eye on him for the next 2 or 3 minutes until he backs back to base. As you guys can see, I keep on looking at both my mid and my Quang because I know that they're about to try something. But yeah, those are the very, very, very basics of support. I honestly can't help you guys with support as much as I hoped I would because I do not main support at all. Support is probably the role that I play the least. However, I always just wanted to get some sort of guide out to you guys just to make sure, hopefully this does end up helping. In my opinion, I don't know whether or not it will because it was very, very basic. But yeah, honestly, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe for way more content because next I have way more how to play specific heroes coming up, starting probably from Sevrog or even my other mains. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave it down in the comments below and peace!